So first and foremost, it is truly a pleasure to join you this afternoon, and I'm sincerely grateful to each of you for being here. I know it's Sunday and right around kickoff for a lot of NFL games, so I completely understand if watching football or the Mets or the Reds, as we were discussing, if that is much more appealing than listening to me talk. Now, for those who are familiar with my work, you know that I've presented on Rachel many times before. So the opening portion of this talk may feel a bit familiar. That said, I'll move quickly through the background material and spend most of the time highlighting new insights since Rachel's transition to her new role as the Director of Player Development for the Miami Marlins. So with that, let's begin. Okay, so I know some of you have seen this slide before, but it remains one of my favorites because it offers a clear visual of the many barriers Rachel has broken and the numerous firsts she has achieved over the course of her career. So let's just run through these quickly. And of course, all these pertain to Major League Baseball. So Rachel was the first female strength and conditioning intern, female strength and conditioning coordinator, female Latin American strength and conditioning coordinator, female hitting coach, female futures game coach, female manager, and in 2024, she became the second female director of player development. Obviously a historical career. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. So born on July 5th, 1987 to Jim and Bonnie Balkovec, Rachel has reiterated throughout many interviews over the years that all of her accomplishments can be traced back to Jim and Bonnie and how they raised her. From a very young age, Rachel and her sisters were taught the value of hard work, a principle she fully attributes to Jim and Bonnie. Her parents always reiterated, anything is possible with work. Rachel and her sisters all had jobs starting at the ages of 13 and 14. And Rachel's first job was serving popcorn at the local movie theater. Anything Rachel or her sisters wanted to buy, they had to pay for it with their own money. That was the rule in the Balkovec household. Now, Rachel herself was an athlete growing up. She was a catcher on the high school softball team. And even at a young age, she constantly demonstrated a take charge mindset, demanding excellence for others while setting even loftier goals and expectations for herself. So Rachel began her college career at Creighton University before transferring to the University of New Mexico. While she was a catcher on the softball team, she was kept off the field due to what is commonly referred to as the yips. The audience may recall Rick Ankiel or Chuck Knobloch. So this led her to seek other opportunities to contribute to the team off the field. And she found that opportunity in the weight room. And as she told me, she was an average softball player who found solace in the weight room. And she would use that as a stepping stone to her next opportunity, which would be a graduate assistantship at Louisiana State University. And it was during her time in Baton Rouge that her passion for the weight room was truly cemented. And she said to herself, okay, this is something I can see myself doing as a career. Additionally, her time at LSU really solidified her passion and determination to pursue a career in professional baseball. It's important to keep in mind that Rachel's passion for professional baseball did not stem from her love of softball, but rather from her fascination with player development and the minor league system as a whole. So after graduating from LSU, Rachel became an intern with the Johnson City Cardinals in the summer of 2012. From there, she would go on to intern in the Dominican Baseball League, at Arizona State University, and with the Chicago White Sox on 2 separate occasions. However, she still received 0 offers from any organization. Now, her sister wanted to try an experiment, and I'm sure some of you have heard this story as it is a classic tale. She said, let's change your name from Rachel to Ray to make it gender neutral and just see if you get any offers. And sure enough, the offers started pouring in. Of course, the offers came in for Ray and not Rachel. Now, in 2014, the St. Louis Cardinals did offer her the position of minor league strength and conditioning coordinator, for which she accepted. She did that for 2 years, and then in 2016, she was hired by the Houston Astros, where she would remain until 2018. All right, so here we are in November of 2019, and the New York Yankees have hired Rachel to be a minor league hitting coach. So she would spend the next 3 seasons traveling around Florida and Latin America, working with the various minor league teams. Then on January 9th, 2022, I remember it like it was yesterday, the sports world awoke to earth-shattering news. The Yankees have promoted Rachel to be manager of the Tampa Tarpons, their low A affiliate. And with that, she became the first female manager in professional baseball history, making her debut on Friday, April 8th, 2022, and walking away with the W. All right, so now we're in January of 2024, and the Miami Marlins have hired Rachel to be their next director of player development. Now, this job appealed to Rachel for a few reasons. First, her ultimate goal has been and presumably remains to be a general manager. And this position allows her to combine her desire to work in the front office with her passion for minor league player development. It really is the best of both worlds. Also, this opportunity in Miami represented a clean slate. Now, what I mean by that is when Peter Bendix took over as the new president of baseball operations, he initiated a full organizational restructure. So he brought in a new assistant general manager, a new director of baseball operations, and reshaped the front office entirely. So this fresh start offered a unique opportunity to implement new ideas, a new direction, and new long-term plans for the organization, something that appealed to Rachel and something that she wanted to be a part of. Now, before we go any further, we should stop for a moment and talk about this idea. What exactly does a director of player development do? So in Rachel's case, she oversees the entirety of the Marlins minor league system. So this includes 2 teams based out of the Dominican Republic, 2 complex teams based out of Jupiter, Florida, and your 4 full season affiliates, low A, high A, double A, triple A. So in total, that's 8 teams, each with its own roster of players, staff, and logistical needs that she oversees. Also, keep this in mind, and I think this is really important. Her responsibilities extend far beyond just overseeing player progress. They also encompass managing the development infrastructure itself. So while that does include coaching staffs, that also includes nutrition plans, strength and conditioning programs. She oversees all of that for the minor league system. Remember, that's 8 teams. So while Rachel, not too long ago, was a coach herself, she now serves in a role where she is essentially coaching the coaches, which I think is really neat. So since joining the Marlins, Rachel has stressed the importance of building a staff that has a blue-collar mentality. So this includes a staff that is going to be innovative, creative, and who has the mentality of completely maxing out what they have available to them. Because as you can imagine, the Marlins budget is not quite the same as some other organizations. Now, along similar lines, when it comes to hiring for Rachel, it's all about work ethic. In her own words, if you work your butt off, we have people here who can teach you hitting, and pitching. She values individuals who are hungry, those who are eager to learn, and those who are fully invested in the player development process. Okay, now I think this next part is really interesting. So I presume many of us have heard of this idea of process versus goal orientation. And Rachel has always leaned towards being more process oriented herself, and she has carried this over to her time in Miami. She often talks to her players about controlling what can be controlled in the moment and focusing on small incremental goals. And if you think about it, for a 16-year-old just entering the Marlins organization, this process-oriented approach is especially valuable, helping them improve one skill at a time without being overwhelmed by the long road ahead to the majors. Also, Rachel wants to marry that old school player-driven mentality with the newer, more progressive approaches to player development. So let me unpack that for you. So as we know, baseball has, for the most part, traditionally been a sport rooted in legacy, where former players naturally transition into coaching roles. But in more recent years, there's been an influx of new voices in the game, people who might not have played professionally or even played at all, but they bring with them a specialized training, a specialized skill set in, for example, analytics or sports science. So the question becomes, how can we marry both perspectives to create the most effective environment for both player development and organizational growth? Okay, so one thing that Rachel has often spoken about when it comes to improving the minor league system as a whole is this idea of incentivizing players, or in her own words, pay minor league players incentives for winning. She believes that introducing performance-based incentives at the minor league level, similar to those awarded at the major league level, could really have a meaningful impact on the minor league system. So by rewarding team success, organizations begin to foster a more unified team culture in the minors, encouraging players to invest more fully in collective goals and winning as a group, opposed to just individually climbing throughout the system. Now, one tool that Rachel uses to foster competitiveness and accountability is something called the competitive cauldron. So, for example, she will divide players into smaller teams of, let's say, 3 or 4 guys, and she'll track their performance over a 5 or 6 week span. So players earn points for actions that reflect effort and execution, such as hustling down the line on a routine ground ball or hitting a ball 95 miles per hour off the bat. On the other hand, points can be deducted for lapses, such as failing to run out a routine ground ball. And at the end of the period, the team with the highest point total is rewarded. So because there's a tangible incentive, players become invested, not just in their own performance, but in holding one another accountable. And this is really important. As Rachel describes it, the system naturally cultivates peer accountability, where teammates push one another to meet standards and stay focused on the little things that ultimately contribute to winning habits. Okay, so I will end here, and this slide, this paragraph, and what I'm about to say will surely sound familiar to many of you, as this is how I normally end my presentations on Rachel. So Rachel will be the first to admit that she is a daughter, sister, feminist, mentor, and role model first, and baseball representative second. Her greatest concern lies not in player performance or games won, but did I make this player grow into a better father, a better husband, a better son? Did I make an impact on how dads view their daughters? Did I positively impact the community for which I am a part? That's what matters most to her. That's what makes her happy. And I believe it is rather clear by now that her influence extends far beyond the realm of baseball. She has and continues to create a profound legacy that I am sure will continue to inspire many generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Barrett. It's been fun to follow Rachel's career with you, and we look forward to your return to keep us up to date with what's going on with her. We have some comments in the chat about a research study on her leadership style would be awesome. I think that's a great idea. Comments about the blue collar mentality. Especially when we talked a lot yesterday about baseball being cost prohibitive to many kids. Good points, good points. Other question, is Rachel fluent in Spanish? I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna let you talk about it, Barrett.
Sure. So it's actually, that's a great question, whoever shared that. And actually, so yeah, she is fluent in Spanish. And when she started working with the St. Louis Cardinals, she taught herself Spanish because she knew that would be such a valuable trait to have in minor league baseball. And one story that some of you maybe have heard me share before, when she was with the Cardinals, she invented this game called Pin the Tail on Yadier Molina. Just, just like pin the tail on the donkey, it was pin the tail on Yachty. And actually, there's a picture of that in the presentation. So she would essentially help the players learn English by having them put the words in English on Yadier's body. So foot, ankle, glove, all that type of stuff. And I remember reading somewhere that, again, she purposely taught herself Spanish because she knew it would be a valuable asset to her. And if you recall, her first internship after the Johnson City Cardinals was in the Dominican Baseball League. I mentioned that briefly. And one of the reasons she got that was because she was fluent in Spanish. So yes, even from a very young age, starting out in her career, that was a point to teach herself Spanish, and that ended up paying off for her really down the road. But the Yadier Molina pin the tail on Yadi, that's a classic story for everyone to remember.
I think I noticed that picture. It was at a whiteboard, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. Let's see. It's refreshing to see there's a variety of spots for people in baseball with universal or transferable skills. Absolutely. Do we know how Rachel has been received by the players she's worked with? Has she received any backlash from her own players because she's a woman?
So I think before I comment on that, let me quickly, that's an excellent point, Al. It's refreshing to see individuals with other skill sets getting opportunities in professional baseball. For those that might remember, last year I presented on Melissa Lambert, who is currently a coach with the Kansas City Royals. And she never played baseball. She was a soccer player, but she is a licensed counselor. And she was the first female coach for the Royals. She brought to the team that specific skill set that has been so valuable to the players. So that's just one example of individuals getting the opportunity to work in professional baseball with these other skill sets. And actually, no, in talking to Rachel and talking to others, she really, and I don't think anybody would have any reason to lie, she really, I think, has felt pretty welcome. Again, certainly there was discrimination early on, and there still might be, but for the most part, I haven't really heard any horror stories. I think she's genuinely been accepted by all the players and everyone she's worked with. I think the players have the mindset that, I'm here to do a job and get better and reach the majors. And whether that's Rachel helping me or Robert helping me, it doesn't matter. I want someone who can help get me to the ultimate goal. So fortunately, no, I think the players for the most part have always been incredibly welcoming of her and probably admirable of her, as many of us are.
Thank you. Leslie asks, in your talks with her, has she given any thoughts on what she thinks most needs to change or improve in the area of player development?
So admittedly, that was not, I haven't spoken to her in a couple years, so that was not a topic that she and I ever discussed just because she wasn't in the player development realm. But it's interesting. I did read somewhere, and I don't know if this is true or not, because you don't know what to believe online these days, but I did read somewhere where the Marlins are one of the few organizations where they're doing like live BP on the field, to make it more of like a game environment opposed to just, traditional batting practice. They're having the pitchers throw to the guys live to make it more game-like. So I can only imagine, knowing what I know a little bit about Rachel and the more progressive approach to player development, that they're trying to make practice as realistic to the game as possible, which I think is certainly a
Yeah.
step in the right direction. I mean, you could be, as you all are aware, you can be a great batting practice hitter, but when you step into the game, it's a whole different environment. So how can we replicate in practice the game as much as we can? But to your question, Leslie, I would point to the incentivizing players. I think that's something that she's spoken about in interviews over the past year or so. So I'll be interested to see how that comes about.
Other questions, comments? Is there an organization within baseball that supports their player development managers? Do they get together and have conferences and meetings to talk about what they're doing and how they can improve, or does each team is kind of does their own system, if you will, their own way?
Okay, so admittedly, I don't know the answer to that question, and I don't want to BS something that I don't know the answer. But I will say, I'm confident from listening to different interviews that, as I mentioned in the presentation, Rachel is now essentially coaching the coaches.
Mhm.
I'm confident she's meeting with coaches, seeing how, again, almost like an instructor working with a player, she's working with the coaches, getting feedback, and doing what she can to help improve the coaching throughout the organization. I think it'd be great if Major League Baseball did have something like that. But at this point, I would imagine it's on a team by team basis. But I honestly don't know, to be honest, to tell you the truth.
What's your next project?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I assume Rachel's going to be in this position for quite a while. So I don't know if there'll be any new material coming out. I don't know. I need to find a new project. Maybe I can, do something on the, historical, Leslie Heafy or something like that. She's pretty historical in her own right. So maybe that'll be my next project. I'm not sure.
Well, there's been lots of ideas of women who you could keep track of at the conference. So
Sure. Yeah,
there's a lot
absolutely.
of subjects out there. That would be great.